Yeah, so we've been talking a lot about spiritual friendship, and actually just hearing the talks and listening to Atuli Mati last week, yeah, it just so warms my heart, because, you know, that really is the heart of the Sangha, is just, yeah, so meaningful and so deep, and what it's all about for me, really. Yeah, and I liked the way Atuli Mati last week spoke of the 4 characteristics of attraction. And obviously Maggie spoke about that just now. You know, it's attractive. The Sangha is attractive. And certainly when I came along, I was attracted to the people. It was the people that drew me in. So, yeah, this morning I'm going to be talking specifically about one of the Sanggrahavastus, the second Sangrahavastu, on loving speech or kindly speech. And I'm going to talk about that actually in the context of my chapter, which, as many of you know, is a group of our local order members, Shtimanaga, Silanatha, and, oh gosh, my mind has gone completely blank, Kaunanatha. And we've all committed to going for refuge to the Free Jewels in the context of our Triratna community. So the context isn't just the context in which to share our practice, but in fact, it is practice in itself. So when we take as order members the 10 precepts, we not only commit to truthful communication, but also to kindly speech, helpful speech, and harmonious speech. And further, we take a vow at our ordination with harmony with friends and brethren. We accept this ordination. So Atuli Mati mentioned last week of the challenges of bringing loving speech, kindly speech into the Sangha, because we haven't all obtained transcendental wisdom. So of course, as a consequence, our speech isn't as always loving as we'd like it to be. So I suppose coming to my vision, which has been inspired by human communication, by connection, is the words of the threefold puja. May our communication with one another be Sangha. And whenever we recite that, it always warms my heart. And also I can recall, I'm sure some of you will, back at the old Buddhist centre in Manor Road, a short piece of writing that was framed and always caught my eye whenever I came into the centre, which was displayed in the office window. So some of you will recognise this. I believe that humanity is basically one. I believe that it is possible for any human being to communicate with any other human being, to feel for any other human being, to be friends with any other human being. This is what I truly and deeply believe. And that's Sangharachita from A Peace is a Fire. So this seemingly simple statement is quite profound in its meaning. In fact, I would go as far as to say that this is what it means to be human. This is what it means to be a human being, that we can communicate, that we can connect. I'm not talking about a superficial level, but when we really connect with another person. To speak at depth implies a commonality, and within the context of a spiritual community, it means having a shared ideal. Without commonality, we cannot really communicate. In fact, one could argue that going for refuge to the Sangha jewel is essentially a matter of communication, not merely an exchange of ideas and information. So what I mean, for example, is if I said to somebody, well, last week I was in Norwich, sure they'll understand the statement perfectly, and an exchange of ideas would have taken place, but there hasn't necessarily been any communication. And if we find our contact with others, and even our friendships, sometimes frustrating and disappointing, exchanges that people at work and parties meaningless, it is because we're not using them as a medium for communication. So what is communication? Well, it's not that easy to say. So for the purpose of exploring this refuge in the Sangha, a working definition might be a vital mutual responsiveness on the basis of a common ideal and a common principle. So I'm just going to explore that just a little more. So vitality in our communication implies that there is a quality of aliveness to it, that we are speaking from our depths, from what is really important to us. It is mutual because it is two-way, not one of those one-way barrages where we come away wondering what just happened and realizing that we weren't even asked how we were. So let's become interested in those we are speaking to. We can choose to be metaphor and friendly, and it doesn't have to depend on the other person. And responsiveness, because communication is not fixed, it's not pinned down, and similarly not reactive. We listen and we are heard. There can be a sensitivity to one another. And when communication is like this, it can be really liberating. So how can we move towards this vital mutual responsiveness? So Subhuti, in his talk, which unfortunately was not recorded, in India, on the 6 weeds living in the wilderness of the human heart, says we can find the weeds of suspicion, rumour, taking sides, so that's when 2 people fall out, jealousy, breaking off communication, and complaining. And if we find those weeds in our garden, we need to pull them up. And I'm sure we can all recognise those weeds in our own gardens. And to live the spiritual life, we have to learn to work with these areas. So in order to remove these weeds, we need firstly to be honest with ourselves. And what can we plant instead? Well, Subhuti says we need to plant confession, forgiveness, rejoicing in merits, and gratitude. He further says that these are the 4 fundamental virtues of the spiritual community. I'm fortunate enough to be in a chapter where these seeds are constantly planted. We have a common understanding that we are not perfect, but all trying to work with our samskaras. We all have a common goal and are trying to aspire to our fullest potential and are prepared to work with our stuff. In fact, we have committed to 4 evenings looking at our own conditioning with all its murkiness. I sometimes think of a spider web in this context, clearing the cobwebs of our minds. We haven't actually done this yet, so it might just be me with the dirt, of course. So for me, this shows a real deep level of trust that only comes from knowing each other more deeply over time and having a confidence in each other's practices. It means allowing the communication to go into my heart. I'm a heady thinking type, and it takes a lot for me to get out of my thinking head and into my feelings, into my heart mind. But I have learned that it is only by going into my feelings that I can understand what my needs are behind them. Feelings as I have learned, are essentially feedback as to whether my needs are being met or not. Needs are not just physical needs such as food, water and air, but psychological and spiritual too, such as our needs for understanding, support, honesty and meaning. And through this connection with myself, I realise that I can connect with others. My needs are the same as everyone else's. They are universal needs. By understanding my own needs, I have a choice whether to meet them internally or externally. It gives me the power and self-responsibility to act, and whether it's to ask for help, which is a real working ground for me of vulnerability, or to seek the answers within. So to come to the end of this little journey, as my own practice deepens, I learn to know myself and others more deeply. I can deepen my communication and learn to speak more kindly, understanding more where others are coming from. They have needs to be met as I have needs to be met, even though, to be honest, sometimes it does baffle me. It deepens my rather simplistic view that we do what we do because we think it will just make us happy. And although it does give a basic framework, I think it will go far deeper. As I deepen my practice, I have found I've connected more deeply with the essence of my practice to transform myself into the Buddha figure I was given at ordination to meditate upon, Vajrasattva, who represents purity. So this is what I am working with at present, purification of my speech. And I hope that through my own working ground, I can be part of something bigger, go beyond the polarization that this world is so full of, and transcend my egocentric view of others, not judging whether they are right or wrong, but seeing the conditions that have led them to where they are now. Sensing their feelings, understanding their needs, and then connecting to them through listening and responding with kindly, loving words. And I'm going to just finish with a quote, which I think kind of represents this, from Rumi: "Out beyond the ideas of wrongdoing and right doing is a field. I'll meet you there."